A British Airways flight from Gqeberha to Cape Town Airport had trouble landing yesterday. Comair says that the flight landed safely on its second attempt. Now, the airline says its schedule will be impacted and affected customers will be accommodated. Comair was grounded, you'll remember, for 5 days over safety concerns. For more on this conversation, I'm joined by Dr Guy Leitch from the SA Flyer magazine. Guy, thank you very much for your time this morning. I mean, this raises further concerns around the state of the aircraft used by Comair to transport people across the country.
Yeah, hi, nice to be with you and good morning. It does indeed. Of course, the really unfortunate thing about this one is the timing, that it follows so soon after the lifting of the grounding by the Civil Aviation Authority. It needs to be really, I think, kept in perspective that this was, in fact, a very minor episode. It basically amounted to nothing much more than the filament or the element of the light bulb that gives you the indication of the landing gear having burnt out. But there are specific procedures that need to be followed, and in that case, the full procedure is that the pilots need to go and lift up the carpets and go and have a look at a little window in the floor of the cabin to see that the wheels are actually down and locked. And then they need to do a flyby past the control tower so that the air traffic controllers can also confirm that the wheels are down and locked. And that's obviously very unsettling for the pilots. Obviously, it's really bad for Comair because it does reflect badly on their maintenance, and their maintenance has come into question a lot. This particular aircraft was also the one that suffered the undercarriage problem, where the undercarriage wouldn't retract about 2 months ago, and was almost certainly part of the problem that led to the actual grounding of Comair by the CAA.
So the ACA, the Civil Aviation Authority here, Guy, do you think it was wise of them to allow Comair back into the skies, given the issues of maintenance that had been previously reported and the continuing, as it seems?
Unfortunately, I can't comment on that specific question because the Civil Aviation Authority and I suppose Comair has been very unforthcoming in terms of the detail of the grounding and in particular what was done to lift it. The lack of detail suggests that this was purely a matter of compliance to paperwork, and then that raises the whole question of whether paperwork is inherently a safety issue or not. Obviously, many would argue that it is. But the reality is that the Comair aircraft are getting older. One of the problems Comair found at the lockdown, which forced it into business rescue, was that it wasn't able to renew its fleet. If you remember, it ordered, I think, 5 new Boeing Maxes. It has had to cancel that order. So its aircraft are getting older. They need much more maintenance. SAA Technical and Lufthansa Technical are doing the maintenance, and I think that there are questions to be raised about the maintenance. But the real question is whether the Civil Aviation Authority was justified in grounding and then whether it's justified in uplifting. It seems that certainly there were enough red flags initially for the Civil Aviation Authority to have done a grounding. If I may just continue, I would say that Comair must take this event as a huge warning, as perhaps the last straw, to force it to actually completely revise its systems. It needs to overhaul its entire safety management systems and culture. Other airlines that were confronted with this 10 years ago did this. It's up to Comair now to reassure the South African travelling public, indeed the world, and specifically, by the way, British Airways, its big partner in England, that it is a safe airline to operate.
No, absolutely. I mean, what are your thoughts, Guy, on the fact that some stakeholders or people within the country are saying that, like the EFF, for example, are calling for the permanent grounding of a Comair? Would you say that that's a fair thing to be calling for? I mean, you have mentioned the fact that the aircraft is considerably older and there are big issues of maintenance. But the permanent grounding of the aircraft, do you think that's fair?
No, that would be, quite frankly, in my opinion, absurd. It would be, what should we say, killing the goose that lays the golden egg. The airline industry in South Africa has really benefited from the intense competition amongst the domestic carriers, particularly the low-cost carriers that have made flying between Johannesburg, Durban and Cape Town, the Golden Triangle, so wonderfully cheap. In the past, we were able to see flights for 500 or 600 rand. I think those days have gone with the massive increase in fuel price and the harm suffered by the airlines during the COVID pandemic. But still, we need the competition that Comair provides. Comair provides as much as 40% of all the passenger seats at the moment. And it would make absolutely no sense to listen to the EFF and ground the airline permanently. There is, however, a worry that the airline has been victimized or singled out to enable or to benefit SAA to get back into the air.
And it obviously has benefited SAA over the last few days. I just have to ask your thoughts, what your thoughts are on SAA since it took to the skies recently, Guy. I mean, we have seen a lot of issues between the employee and the employer. But operationally, do you think that they have completely overhauled from what we saw before the business rescue process?
There are two parts to that question. The first part is what do I think about SAA getting back in the air and the way it's doing? So by and large, I think it's doing a good job. It's not expanding too quickly. It's not rushing in and flying empty or half-empty flights, shall we say, at a loss. It's cancelling flights. It's making sure that its loads are good. I have reason to believe that its yields are good. But however, I'm also extremely concerned that SAA is burning cash at a tremendous rate, because its overheads are structured for a much bigger airline. It's still got, over 1,000 employees, which would require a much larger route structure, international, regional, and domestic. It's not beginning to meet that. Whether it's actually doing a good job, well, I think it pretty much is, and I think it needs an opportunity to continue to grow. But it does carry a lot of the baggage of the old, should we call it SAA version 1. It is still controlled by the state, and it's still worrying that the Takata consortium hasn't managed to buy into the airline yet. So there are a lot of worries still about the future of SAA.
Thank you very much, Guy Leitch from SA Fly Magazine.